Hi, I'm Femi OK and you're in the stream. Today, no means no, but is that the way the Swedish court sees it in sexual assault cases? We examine the campaign for a legal definition of sexual consent. Well, our online digital community is already weighing in on this conversation, but is it a controversial conversation as far as they're concerned? Malika Bilal, digital producer of the stream.
You know, I'm inclined to say not so controversial because pretty much everyone is on the same page. No means no.
Right.
There's a little bit of pushback in some ways, and we'll get into that in the show, but I want to play this video comment from one member of our community who passionately describes why she thinks this conversation is so important. Have a listen.
We do need to change the behavior and we do need to change the attitude. We can't no longer blame and judge the women for not saying no enough. We need to put the blame on the ones who are committing the rapes. We need to have consent. We need to be precautious. We need to take care of one another, where the right for your own body is the right of your own body and nobody else's.
Well, that's the voice of Nina. We want to hear your voice as well, so join the conversation with #AJStream.
Part of the conversation in the studio, we have Cici Wallin, and Cici is a newspaper columnist who's also been organising protests calling for a consent law in Sweden. She works to support rape victims and is herself a rape survivor. Cici, it's really good to have you here in the studio.
Thank you, it's very nice to be here.
You're going to hear more from Cici in just a moment. So, to prosecute and prevent rape, does sexual consent need to be defined by law? That's the question that many Swedes are asking after recent acquittals of suspected rapists. Earlier this month, a 27-year-old man was cleared of rape charges in a Swedish court after saying that the alleged victim's screams of protest were part of a sex game. According to the court, it could not be proven that the man knowingly acted against the woman's wishes. The ruling and similar ones have led to public outrage and online criticism under the hashtag Samtycke, or consent. Just this week, another man was reportedly cleared of rape charges after he said he didn't realise the woman was drunk. Now, many of Sweden's political parties want to re-examine the country's rape law to more clearly define sexual consent, but will a stricter definition help to stop rape? So, here to talk about this, Madeleine Leon Hufvud is a criminal justice professor at the University of Stockholm. She's joining us via Skype in Gothenburg, Sweden. And Alex Norden is a journalist and filmmaker who's been following the debate over Sweden's sex crime laws. So, Madeleine, Alex, Cici, it's great to have you all here in the mix. I'm going to start with somebody who actually has been involved in rape. He is actually a rapist. Let me tell you a little bit about his story before we go to the tape. He was in high school, he was a teen, he was at a party with other friends, and they came across a girl who was so drunk she was unconscious, and they took pictures of her and then they raped her. Now, this video comes to us via Alex, who you'll hear a little bit more from later on in our program, but I just want to set up the scene before you hear what he told Alex. Have a listen to this.
First, I thought it was her. I was thinking about it a lot. It is my fault. In my family or in school or in society, we did not talk about this. What is okay and what is not okay. I feel very ashamed. I do not drink anymore. I think we in Sweden need to fix this. It has to be some different. Sex should only mean respect, and everyone says okay. The guy and the girl.
So that interview was done by Alex Norden and Ran Films, but Madeleine, here's the situation. The teen girl didn't turn up for school for a while. She came back to school. She didn't prosecute the rapist, and then she left school. And the young man here is saying, well, I didn't know how to behave in this sort of situation. The rape law, as it stands in Sweden, would it deal with a situation like that?
There would be difficulties, I'm afraid. I have to tell you, we don't have the kind of
clear law that we need to have. And in a case like this, the prosecutor might very well decide not to take the case to court, because it takes a lot of evidence, not only what the victim can tell. There needs to be more than that to take the case to court. And that's why only 1 out of 10 reports will be brought to court. So in Sweden.
Madeleine, what's missing in the rape law that Sweden has right now? Is there an area where you feel, well this is, no, you literally call it the grey area. What is that grey area in the rape law?
Well, the grey area is that the law is not based on consent or lack of consent. It's still a question of coercion, violence or threat, or a specifically vulnerable position for the victim. And the question of consent is not dealt with by the Swedish law as it stands now, even since this summer, when we got the present law that we have. But I can tell you that actually today, the last of our political parties, the majority, the leader of the present government, the moderates, who has the position of the Minister of Justice, have just gone out and said we have to reconsider the law and look at consent. So it's a very happy day here in Sweden, even though we haven't seen yet what will come out of this.
Cici, you're shaking your head. You're smiling at that reaction. Is this the first time you heard that?
No, I read it on my way here, and it's amazing. It's not victory yet, but it's a step. It's very important.
And it's actually the result of the manifestations and all the work that Cici and others have done. So I'm very happy to see that we got them this far, and it has been a lot of resistance up till now.
Well, you know, what Madeleine and what Cici, what you're talking about are the problems to the law and how it can be changed online. People are weighing in on that. One person writes in, if you physically injure someone, you can't just claim that you weren't aware of it and get away with it, which is what she says is a problem with the current law on rape in Sweden. Another person on Facebook writes in saying that sexual interaction, though, is very subtle. Any top-down law will either backfire against men or women. Making it strict will put innocent guys in jail, this person writes. Making it loose will put females in danger of rape. There's no happy medium, but Cici, you're fighting for a happy medium. What does that look like for you?
I think this is about more than the laws. It's about the values in society, which signals we send out. About in Sweden is famous for being very equal. We were first in the world with sexual educations in schools, for example. The Swedish feminism is very well known worldwide, but still, when it comes to sexual crimes, we're after. We're not catching up, and I think that's a big problem. We need to talk about it earlier in schools with young boys, what's okay, what's not okay, to make sure that someone's willing to do that or that with you. It's very, very important.
When I hear the objections that we often have heard here too, the one that you showed us here, I realize that the picture of sex that young people have today is the one that they get from the pornography. They believe that they can just, do what they want if there is somebody available, and all the things about consent or being careful and loving seems to be forgotten right now in Sweden, and that's very strange and very sad.
Alex, we started with one of the stories that you shared with us. Thank you for that. I know you've been talking to lots of people and you've been doing this for a long time. Can you get us up to date with how perhaps some of the men that you've spoken to feel about this consent law, or maybe a consent law coming into Sweden?
Well, I think one of the most interesting sources that I met is a former criminal that right now is working in a rehabilitation group for people trying to re-enter society. And this is where I met my source, where we just did this video. And what he said is the superhero macho culture, which is still very prevalent, it puts people in only two categories, the winner and the loser, the one on top and the one on bottom. And what he said he saw in violent groups and in prison is that it's directly damaging to those machos as well, because if you do not acknowledge the victim as a human being, you very often end up being the victim yourself. So refusing to see the issue of rape is a direct threat and danger to the, not only to the perpetrators, but to the other people that believe that it is the right of the strongest. You can take what you want.
I totally agree on that.
I would argue with Madeline. I think pornography is the last culprit here. I think it starts in the family and it starts in the school.
Well, Madeline, Madeline, I want your thoughts on that. I hear you agreeing with what you just said.
Yes, of course, it's so too. But I think for many young people today, they just lack this influence from family. Even might have, the only one might be a bad influence then. So we do need better education and resources for information to teachers who are not very well educated in these matters. And as a basis for that, we need a clear law stating that consent is needed. And of course, being a criminal lawyer, I stress the importance of that. But I know that it takes a lot of other things to change the attitudes. But a law is a basis for that. We know that from introducing the law in Sweden against buying sex, you know, which is a very special thing to have. It's a crime to buy sex. And when we had that, after a while, you could notice that the attitude had changed. And we don't have that much trafficking and so on in Sweden compared to, for example, Denmark.
Well, Cici, we're getting tweets about this consent. Alexandra writes in something that I've seen in other tweets. She says, we're talking about the need to define, but not how to define. What definition of consent would the guests like to see become law? And before you answer that, I'd like to play this video comment on someone who has a problem with how consent is seen currently.
Sure.
Why do we need a consent law here in Sweden, or samtycke as we call it? Well, first of all, it would make an important statement saying that no means no. And if you're too drunk or too scared to say no, that still doesn't mean that you said yes. And there's been a series of really bizarre court rulings in Sweden saying, well, basically, if you said yes to having sex with one guy, you said yes to having sex with all of his friends. And we need to end this right now.
She's referring to a case over the summer in which 6 young men were acquitted after a gang rape.
Yeah, and also we had another case in Sweden where I think it was a 14-year-old girl. She got raped by, it's called a bottle rape, because they used a bottle and then they all went free. So I think, or something else maybe happened afterwards, Madeline knows about it. But the thing I want to say is that I totally agree what's just been said. I totally agree in that. And a no means a no. Sorry, your question was more like...
everyone seems to be on the same page that no means no, at least on our panel, but how do you go about defining that? How do you define consent?
There are actually, can I interrupt and say?
Yeah, you can do that because you're the law expert.
Well, there are already 2 proposals where none of them uses the word consent. We talk about a consent law because just to know what we mean. But the 2 different suggestions, one would state that it is a crime to commit a sexual act against somebody without his or her permission. And the other one says it's a crime to commit a sexual act or get forced to get a sexual act from a person who does not freely participate. And the last one is actually I was appointed to do this a couple of years ago. By using that word, I meant to stress that sex isn't something that one person does using another person's body, but it's a mutual act. And it doesn't have, of course, to be a consent in words or even in a written contract. That's what some people have said who are opposing to this. But everyone who is not a child or has been knows anything about sex knows that consent or willingness can be shown in many different ways. That's what we mean.
And also, except for the law part, I would like to point out that it's about values. Just like Madeleine said before, when we had our law against to buy sex, it also sent out some values that we don't do this. This is not okay. Some people can think it's okay, but the majority and the elected politicians, they don't think it's okay. We don't think it's okay. And it's the same with consent now, that maybe it's not going to get more people convicted, but it's going to send out a signal that you have to make sure that a person really want to have sex with you before you go ahead.
So you just said maybe it won't get more people convicted. What is the point then of that? Just to send a signal?
I hope it will get more people convicted.
Because why were you out protesting if you don't think it was?
Because it's so important with the values in society. We have a rape culture also in Sweden, the equal, nice, progressive Sweden. We have a rape culture, and we have to end that. And this is one step.
Madeleine.
And actually, may I interrupt and say that we don't really look forward to having more people, rapists in prison. What we hope, and I think we can count on, is having less cases of rape. And that is because we have another, we can compare it to another thing, legal issue that we decided on in Sweden in 1979, namely to make it a crime to use violence against a child in bringing it up at home or in school.
And Madeleine, did the cases of beating children and violence against children, did they dramatically drop?
It changed the behavior totally.
Right.
But when that was discussed, people also said, why do you do this? You can't prove what happens at home. But of course, now we all say that is no reason to make it legal and permitted to hit your child.
Well, Madeleine, there's someone on Twitter that agrees with you that this isn't about necessarily more conviction. Sarah says this will not convict more men. It is a law to prevent rather than sentence more people, so preventing rape in the first place. But Alex, I want to go to you with an exchange on our Facebook page, and this represents what many people are writing to us about. William says, if a woman is drunk, she can't consent and is not accountable. If a man is drunk, he's accountable. He puts in 2 question marks. They should both be charged with being drunk and accountable. Someone writes back, Sarah says, William, you totally missed the point. No matter who is drunker than the other, a rapist is always accountable for the rape. Can you take us through this kind of thinking of the reasoning of the first person that I read? And is that something that you're seeing in the interviews that you're doing with people?
Well, I think at this point, the people that I'm interviewing that are for the new law, what they're really outraged at is the ridiculous cases where caretakers' bodily fluids are found in an underage girl that is under his care and he is deemed innocent, or a case of a young woman being forced to have sex with 6 guys. What kind of excuse is being drunk for such behavior? Or I think if Madeleine could give a short answer, these cases that have outraged Sweden recently with the new law, are we going to see less of such outrageous cases?
Yeah, that's what we hope, because if we, when we have this question of changing the law, there is a debate going on and a discussion which will help changing the attitude, and people would be aware of where they can draw the line between what is okay and what is not.
Right.
Yeah, and of course the questions will be different now. since the prosecutor has to prove that there has been the use of violence, or that the door has been locked, or the victim has been severely frightened or something like that.
Okay.
There will be no question about how did you get her consent. That is quite irrelevant.
All right, Cece.
If I could just quickly comment on that video that we just saw. This was a protest in front of the Swedish government, organized by two, well, it was many organizations, but I'm thankful for the interviews and information that I got from FATTA and Crossing Borders. And this is, I mean, when I hear the arguments against this, you have thousands of people protesting what is happening right now with sexual violence. You don't see the people that give their arguments on the internet confronting these people there. So it's a little hard for me to understand the validity of their argument. If you take out the word rape and say, this person was drunk, so I took their cell phone and their car, does that make it okay?
All right, so Alex, you make a very good point. We lost a little bit of your audio, but Cece, I know you wanted to jump in. Go ahead.
No, I just want to say that we shall never forget about the shame. The shame is hand in hand with sexual crimes. I mean, every victim I've spoken to, also myself, I mean, it took 6 years for me to report this to the police. No one got convicted. It was, I mean, it's okay, I'm here and I'm fine, and I'm using my energy to help others now when I'm fine. But what I want to say is that everyone says that the shame is so big, even in Sweden, even in all over the world, in the richest, the most welfare countries. It doesn't matter, because shame is so it's very, very usual when this happens to you. It's like, who's going to believe you? We had so many cases in Sweden which are totally insane, but we have one case called Bjästa the case. It was a guy, he admitted that he had raped this girl, but still she had the shame on her.
So here we are. So you started organising the protest. No means no. Madeleine mentioned a word right at the beginning, manifestation, which means protest in Swedish. So here we are with the Ministry of Justice looking into putting consent into the rape law.
News of today.
Yes, as somebody who's actually been in that situation. You took 6 years to report your rape. Is today a milestone, or are you just cautious?
I want to see it as some kind of milestone, because as it is now, I can just see us going forward, not backwards.
All right, we are going to continue this conversation with Madeleine and also Alex and Cece. We're going to take them all to the post show at stream.aljazeera.com. Meanwhile, do you want to check in on what our online community have been talking about and what they're doing right now?
Well, the conversation is still going on, and I think, you know, after seeing, we did this WebEx not too long ago, web exclusive, about the protest that you helped organize and helped spark. I pulled it up on my page here. Going into the post show, a lot of people are asking, what does this mean for the representation of Sweden as a feminist paradise? It's also often been called. So that'll be an interesting discussion.
All right, and that's something, Cece, that you mentioned at the very beginning as you were starting to talk. You said Sweden is known as being very feminist, so we will find out what you mean by that, and also what it means by when people are looking at you as probably a model and an example of where to go morally, perhaps. So, we have been listening to Madeleine Leon Huford, Alex Norden, and also Cece Wallen. We will take them all to the post show at stream.aljazeera.com. So what will we be doing tomorrow? Well, on the next show, Drawing Controversy. We explore the art and the activism of cartoonists who challenge authority around the world. Should be a very animated conversation. Malika is groaning. She's like, oh no, you didn't.
That was actually a really good one.
I didn't say that.
It was good.
I did. Stay with us. The post show is next at stream.aljazeera.com. We will see you online. Thanks for watching. Hello again, this is the Streams Online Post Show. We're talking about the issue of defining consent in Sweden's sex crimes law. We're going to get right back to the conversation. We did mention about Sweden being a feminist paradise. We'll find out what the guests think about that and what the reality is. But I also want to share with you a little tape from Ida Ostenson. She is from FATTA, which is a Swedish feminist group, and she's talking about this issue of consent. And actually, she is rehearsing the pros, the cons of the argument for having consent law and not in the rape legislation in Sweden. So have a listen to this.
We argue for a consent-based law, and our opponents mainly uses three arguments to argue against that. The first one is that the present law is already taken consent into account, and that's simply not true. If violence, threats, or that the victim was defenseless cannot be proven, a no is not taken into account by the law. The second argument is there will be problems with the burden of proof. And the third argument is that conditions for the victim will be worse than today. And that's impossible. It can't get worse than it is today.
So, Madeleine, that is the feminist argument. Is it also the legal argument as well? Can't get any worse than it is right now?
Well, it has been the arguing from when it has been sent out for review from a few actually sides, not from all, because most people in Sweden, most institutions also who know anything about this reality, they do agree that we need another kind of law. But there has been a resistance, and I would say that even if Sweden is a land where we have equality between sexes to a large extent, we consider it totally okay for a woman or a girl to go out dancing, to dress however she wants to get dressed, to drink alcohol and so on. But we don't protect her, because if she does, we consider it actually her fault. It's her responsibility to prevent something to happen. It's only if they use force or if she is totally drunk that she is protected by the law. And this step, of course, must be taken now. And I'm happy to see that we are on our way. Thanks a lot to FATTA and the other organizations and all the manifestations that we've seen lately.
Let me just check in with Alex, this idea about Sweden being very much a feminist paradise. I just want to hear from a guy's point of view. How do you see Sweden?
Well, I think there are some great things about Sweden that when American friends hear about, they get very jealous. For example, that you are entitled by law to take time off with the birth of your child, and that goes both for women and men, but only once. So if you have two children, the mother can take time off and it will be paid through the government's funding. And then the same goes for the father if there's a second child. The daycare is fundamentally better than in most other countries in the world, and it's affordable. And that's about it as far as I understand, because, Madeline, do women in general still earn less than men? Last time I checked.
They still earn less than men,
as well, yeah.
Yes. And we have fewer women on the company boards and so on. But of course, we have, of course, reached much further than many other countries, even within the European Union. And that's why we have more and more reports on sexual crimes in Sweden, because it is not the degree of shame that we had here before, and that's still the case in many other countries. So we get reports, and that is very important. It's through all these reports made by all these victims that we have reached this far, and hopefully will get to this last important step too. So I think we'll see the same happen in many other countries, because it has of course a lot to do with growing equality between sexes and the women, the state of women.
Well,
I wanted to
go ahead, please.
Yeah, I wanted to discuss quickly the statistics because please correct me if I'm wrong, but I actually see this as a compliment to the Swedish criminal system that this high number of violence, sexual violence is registered, because I know for a fact that the majority of countries out there are not registering all the complaints that they get. And I also believe that in Sweden, every single act of sexual violence is registered as a separate offense. Am I right on that?
Yes, you are.
So I think that that goes a lot towards explaining first how serious the issue is, and second, that it's not unique to Sweden. If you read any reports on the subject that compare statistics between different countries, they say it's impossible to make conclusions because of impossibility of saying how valid the criminal system's reports are. So the answer to the question, is Sweden a feminist paradise? Yes and no.
It's not a paradise, but it's much better for women to be in Sweden than in many other countries. And while we are discussing these issues in Sweden, look at India, what's happened there. Of course, the kinds of rapes that we see there are the absolute most horrible things. But we have reached further, and here in Sweden, women believe and are believed also to have the same value as men.
But I would like to object there, because I think it's a danger with talking about a paradise. You did not now, but it's easy to just sit down and, okay, let's be happy now. That often, as a feminist, I debate a lot on Twitter and stuff, you always get to meet this argument that, why are you complaining? Think about the women in India, think about the women in Sudan. I mean, I don't think you can compare it, because this hate against women is global. The problem with inequality is global, and then we have a bit to walk in Sweden. We're not there yet, but we came far, but not enough.
Well, you mentioned you're not there yet, but I think one of the first steps, at least people online are saying, is the protest. And I want to take us back to some of the images that were being shared from them. This one has a sign that reads, "No consent, no sex," and "Rape equals misogyny." Another picture, it's a dress, not a yes, referencing to it's not about what a woman wears. So this tweet I want to pose to you, Cici. Nixini writes in, "If society, commercials, and media tell you that women are objects to only be used, how will you know that it's wrong to do so?" So she's talking about whether or not it's ingrained in society enough. Are you optimistic that your protests are help change that conversation?
I think every protest is needed. I think every protest is a good thing. It's something progressive. But I totally agree in this, that still, when we still have this rape culture, it's harder for us to make it more equal. You know what I mean? Everyone, every company, the teachers in school, the parents need to take more responsibility, and all of us, to how we enable this. You know what I mean? That I saw today before I came here, some girls in Sweden, they made T-shirts now, and they put it online so you can buy them for real. That says in Swedish then, "I don't want to have sex with you. Thank you for respecting this." And also fabric bags, which you can wear when you go out to the clubs.
Why can't they just say it? Why would you put a T-shirt on?
I think it's more like a statement. It's more like showing how bad it is that, okay, I'm wearing a T-shirt, so this is a no.
Right.
But it's a very alarming thing, really.
Do you think this campaign is starting a conversation? Because really what seems to me is the issue is that starting with young people are not able to have that conversation. If young men don't know that it's not a good thing to have sex with a woman who's unconscious and drunk, that this is sort of respect 101. So is that conversation not happening in Sweden?
It happens, but it happens not that often that it should. I mean, as we heard before here in sex education in school, we talk a lot about like, this is how you use a condom stuff, but you don't talk about the communication, the soft values, if you know what I mean. We don't talk about that, because I think we talk about it, but not enough, because it's too shameful still.
And it is really a taboo, I would say, to talk about male sexuality. We do want more and more men to join in this debate, because they are needed. they are the ones who can explain how boys and young men tend to react. You know, when they are together, they can do things that they wouldn't do if they were one by one, and they have to participate in the discussion and help us to change this attitude among young men. And of course, quite a lot of men do agree, but we want much more help and assistance from men.
Right. Yeah. I enjoyed your company this afternoon. Can you believe we've been talking for 40 minutes? It's been a pleasure.
Yeah,
it's been a real pleasure. And thank you for giving us some insight into conversation that's happening in Sweden. It feels like you could kind of tick that box now. I don't want to be too optimistic, but it feels like you've wrapped up this part of the debate.
You don't. I usually say that you can talk the talk, but you also need to walk the walk. I mean, now we're walking and talking, and that's amazing.
All right. So Cici and Alex and Madeleine, it's been a pleasure having you here on the stream. Thank you very much indeed. Final thoughts from our online community?
I think the conversation will continue as it usually does.
Right.
I'm going to jump into it now right after.
Hashtag AJ stream for all of our guests to continue the conversation online. Let me tell you about the next show, Drawing Controversy. We explore the art and activism of cartoonists who are challenging authority around the world. That's it for now. You'll see us online, stream.aljazeera.com. Thanks for watching.